On April 22nd, the Health Ranger tweeted, "I am officially offering a $5,000 reward for the first person who can correctly point out in which chapter and verse the literal word rapture appears in the Bible. Happy hunting." Apparently, he is skeptical that this evidence exists. He appears to think that his money is safe because he thinks that finding the word rapture in the Bible is as unlikely as procuring an actual Bigfoot carcass as proof that Bigfoot actually exists. But folks, his money is not safe. The word rapture does appear in the Bible, and we will walk through this evidence in the next few minutes. Stay tuned for an investigation of this matter. Hi there, I'm Lee Brainerd. Welcome to Soothkeep and another edition of Prophecy in the Crucible. My mission is truth. Truth that God will own as truth at the judgment seat of Christ. Truth in our doctrine, practice, and our discernment. Now, the Health Ranger's publicity stunt is just the latest iteration of the often repeated soundbite that the word rapture doesn't appear in the Bible. These soundbite theologians have two problems. One, they think that the word rapture doesn't appear in the Bible. And two, they think that the pretended absence of the word rapture from the Bible is somehow evidence that the rapture isn't in the Bible. Both of these notions are wrong. As to the latter point, even if the word rapture were absent from the Bible, that would not be an argument against the rapture. If the concept of the rapture appears in the Bible, then it is irrelevant whether or not the word rapture appears in the Bible. Folks, we need to focus on concepts far more than specific words or grammatical forms. As to this first point, I will demonstrate in the following minutes that the word rapture does appear in the Bible, clearly appears, undeniably appears. So rapture lovers, please help this video go viral. Send the link to all your friends. Let's put a big dent once and for all and forever in this superficial soundbite theology which claims that the word rapture does not appear in the Bible. Let's start with the presence of the word rapture. It does appear in 1 Thessalonians 4:17. "Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." Now you might be asking, how does the word rapture appear in this verse? I don't see it in my English Bible. Folks, the word rapture appears here the exact same way that words like apostle, prophet, and angel appear in the Bible, along with dozens and dozens of other transliterated words and names. Behind the English words apostle, prophet, and angel, we find the Koine Greek words apostolos, prophetes, and angelos. The English translations apostle, prophet, and angel are actually transliterations. That is, the translators have transposed the Greek words into English words, replacing the Greek letters with equivalent English letters. This means that the words apostle, prophet, and angel are in the Bible in both the original Greek and in the English translation. This means that the words apostle, prophet, and angel would still be in the original Greek Bible, even if the English translations had translated them by terms like emissary, foreteller, and messenger, rather than transliterating them as apostle, prophet, and angel. The word apostolos in the Greek is just as much the word apostle in the Bible as the English transliteration apostle is the word apostle in the Bible. To deny this, folks, is to admit that facts are worthless and doctrinal narrative is pure gold. Now that we have established the principle of transliteration, let's turn to the Greek word for rapture, which is harpazo. This is generally translated caught up in the English versions, but sometimes in the commentaries and in the pulpit it's translated by things like snatched up, yanked up, and hauled up. But this Greek word, folks, could be legitimately transliterated by raptured, the same way that we transliterate apostle, angel, and prophet. We could legitimately translate 1 Thessalonians 4:17 in the following manner. Then we who are alive and remain shall be raptured together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. But regardless of whether we transliterate harpazo by rapture or translate it by caught up or snatch up, the word rapture is in the Bible. It is in the original Greek. The word rapture, therefore, stands as immovable in the Bible as the rock of Gibraltar. Well, let's examine the technical details of transliterating from harpazo to English rapture. Many are confused because they don't see the connection between the Greek verb harpazo and the English verb rapture. They don't see how the English verb rapture is a transliteration, a simple transliteration of the Greek verb harpazo. But the picture becomes very clear once you understand the dynamics of transliterating Greek verbs in general and this class of verbs in particular. Let's start with a pragmatic transliteration of apostle. Step 1. You take the word apostolos and you strip it to the root form apostol by dropping the noun ending os. And then the second step is we anglicize apostol into English by dropping the second o and adding silent e to the end. Now, this method of transliteration is very common in moving from Greek to English, and in fact moving from many languages to English. English loves to soften the final vowels in such constructions. And when you do this, you realize that the English word apostle is the same word as Greek apostolos, except that the English word obviously has been anglicized. Well, let's look at a pragmatic transliteration of the Greek verb harpazo. The first step is to strip harpazo down to the root rap, R-A-P. First, you drop the rough breather, the H, at the beginning of the word, which reverses or reverts ARP, A-R-P, back to the original rap. And we'll look at that a little more closely in a minute. And then we drop the verb ending adzo, A-Z-O, and we have the root rap. Now, the second step is to take this root and transform it into the English word, and we do that by adding the ending T-U-R-E, ture. And this makes rap into rapture. This is easy peasy. Now let's focus on the problematic H that we see at the front of the Greek verb harpazo. This H throws many people because they assume that it is part of the verb root. Make no mistake, folks, the root of harpazo is not harp, it's rap, R-A-P. The H at the beginning is not an actual Greek letter. It is a rough breather, which had no letter representation in Greek, although we represent it with an H in English. Imagine if we spelled the word horse as orse, and then we'd have 3 dialectical variations when it comes to pronunciation. Some would pronounce it with a glottal stop, which would be orse. Some would pronounce it with aspiration, which would be horse, and some would pronounce it without any vocalization at the beginning whatsoever, and they would say horse. This is exactly what we have with harpazo in the Greek dialects. Some pronounce it with a glottal stop at the beginning like some do in British English, and they would say harpazo. Some would pronounce it with an aspiration like we do in English, and they would say harpazo. And some would pronounce it with no vocalization whatsoever, and it would sound harpazo. So we're looking at the root rap. Now, the generic root rap belongs to a class of Greek and Latin cognates where most of the Greek dialects add the rough breather or the aspiration to the shared root. And this gives it either a glottal stop or an aspirated H at the beginning. Another member of this class is the Greek verb histemi. The root is ste or stay in Greek, and it's sto in Latin, and it's sta in English, from where we get words like stand and standard. Now when you take this basic root and you're going to use it in the Greek language, the Greeks added the H at the beginning, or the glottal stop, or the aspiration, or the rough breather. And this then, when you add it, required a euphonic vowel, and they used the iota or the I. So they took H, so they took the stem STE, and they added the H, and they added the I. And that comes up to histe. And then they add the verb ending like me, and they have histemi. Now, when the H was added, you'll notice that the vowel A was transposed or metathesized because it is easier to say harp than rap. So you start with the rap, you add the H, you go to rap, and then you switch the arp to rap. And that's just the way it works with many verbs going from Latin to Greek. So make no mistake, folks, the word rapture is in the Bible in 1 Thessalonians 4:17. We could legitimately translate harpazo here by the word rapture, and it would read then, "And we who are alive and remain shall be raptured together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air." The word rapture is in the Bible. It is the Greek word harpazo. And we could legitimately translate it by caught up, or legitimately transliterate it by rapture. Now, the Greek verb harpazo, the Latin verb rapio, and the English verb rapture are not merely cognates, folks. They are the same word with the same stem, rap. Latin adds io to make the basic lexicon form rapio. English adds ture to make the basic lexicon form rapture. And Greek adds h to the front and adzo, the verb ending, to the back to make the standard lexicon form harpazo. What else is interesting about this is that Greek, Latin, and English use this verb rap, whatever form you're using it in the same way with the same meanings. Regularly used for just plain old stealing or burglary, for stealing a woman's purity, which we generally translate rape, and in fact the word rape comes from this very stem. Used the same way in Greek, Latin, and English. And it's also used for stealing or snatching folks out of harm's way. So the bottom line is here, folks, the health ranger owes me $5,000. Now, I doubt that I will ever see the money because he will likely say that he meant the English Bible. But if he goes this route, he is tacitly admitting that I am right and that he has to limit what he means by the Bible to save his wallet from taking a hit. He not only has to limit what he means by Bible to the English Bible, but he has to limit it to the existing standard translations, and he has to limit it to translating this word rather than transliterating it and using it the same way that we use angel, apostle, and 100 other transliterated terms in the Bible. But presenting the truth on this soundbite, this shallow soundbite theology is worth far more to me than money. So may the Lord bless you in all of your studies of His Word to gain a closer knowledge of His things, His Word, His will, and His ways. Eyes wide open, brain engaged, heart on fire. We'll see you next time.